I couldn't move, not right away. It was like my feet were glued to the floor, like my brain couldn't connect with my body. The room was so damn silent, just the faint hum of the fluorescent lights and the distant rumble of thunder outside. Everything else was gone. The desk, the framed awards, the neat stack of contracts I'd spent years negotiating, all of it packed away in that cardboard box, sitting pathetically on the floor. My whole career stuffed into one box. I looked at the chair where Nathan Baines had sat, leaning back like he owned the world, twirling that stupid pen between his fingers as he delivered the news. "I don't need incompetent employees." That's what he said, like I was some temp who'd just fumbled a coffee order. I wanted to tell him, wanted to scream at him, "Do you even know what I do here?" But the words stuck in my throat, choked by the knot of rage and disbelief. He didn't know. He had no idea. Baines was the new hotshot CEO, parachuted in by the board to shake things up after the old man retired. A slick, too confident prick who didn't bother learning names or paying attention to anything that wasn't about him. I'd seen guys like him before. They came in, made a mess, and left with golden parachutes while everyone else got burned. But firing me, that was more than a mess. That was suicide. Because without me, they were screwed, and they didn't even know it yet. The thing is, our biggest clients, the ones keeping the company afloat, they were all Chinese conglomerates. And I was the only one in the entire damn company who could speak Mandarin, not just hello and thank you, but fluently. I'd spent years building those relationships, learning the language, understanding their culture. They trusted me. They wanted to work with me. Not the company, me. But Baines didn't care. I was incompetent. I wasn't part of his vision for the future, and so he cut me loose. I looked out the window, watched the rain hammering against the glass. Somewhere out there, Baines was probably at some fancy restaurant, celebrating his bold new direction for the company. Maybe clinking glasses with the board members who were too blind to see what he'd just done. Or maybe he was sitting alone, hunched over a scotch, that smug little grin still plastered on his face. I could almost hear his voice echoing in my head. "You're not a team player, Michael. You're too stuck in the past." Stuck in the past? I'd practically built the damn present for this company. The past was the only reason they were still standing. The contracts with Xiang Holdings? That was me. The multi-million-dollar deal with the Beijing import-export firm? Me again. The negotiation that saved their asses when the European branch was sinking? That was all me. But none of that mattered now. Not to him. To him, I was just another piece of old furniture to be tossed out and replaced with something sleek, modern, and hollow. I walked over to the box, crouched down, and lifted the lid. Inside, there was the framed photograph of me shaking hands with the CEO of Xiang Holdings. The guy had flown in from Beijing just to seal the deal in person. Said it was because he trusted me. Said it was because I got it. Not because of the company's name, but because of me. Next to it was a stack of folders. My notes, my contacts, my translations. Pages and pages of carefully detailed negotiations. Every nuance recorded. Every cultural pitfall navigated with the kind of care you don't learn from a textbook. All that work. All those years. And Baines just tossed it aside like a crumpled napkin. I felt my jaw clench, my hands trembling as I gripped the edges of the box. The rain outside was coming down harder now, battering against the glass like fists against a door. I could feel it building inside me, that tidal wave of anger and humiliation, and the need to do something, anything. Because without me, those Chinese clients wouldn't stay. They were already teetering on the edge, wary of the changes Baines was making. The only reason they hadn't walked away yet was me. And now I was gone. I stood up, took a deep breath, and glanced back at the office one last time. The walls felt smaller, the air staler, like the room was already swallowing itself whole. I turned toward the door, and that's when I saw it. My phone, lying on the desk, screen lit up. One new message, from Xiang Holdings. I reached for it, my pulse pounding in my ears. The message was just one line. What the hell is going on? I stood in that empty hallway for what felt like hours, staring at Baines' office door. A sliver of light leaked through the crack, a thin, taunting line. Inside, he was probably still sitting there, feet up on his fancy mahogany desk, basking in the glory of his big move. I imagined him on the phone with the board, spinning the narrative, dead weight gone, streamlining the team, making way for new talent. New talent. Yeah. As if that smug bastard could even read the contracts I'd translated. As if he knew the first thing about what Siang Holdings wanted, needed, expected. The arrogance of it made my teeth ache. The phone in my pocket vibrated again. Another text. This time from Ethan, one of the few guys in the office I still trusted. Dude, what happened? Baines just called a meeting, said you weren't a good fit. WTF? Not a good fit. That was what I was now. Not a good fit. Like a pair of shoes that pinched, a chair that creaked, a cog that didn't quite turn right. My hands shook as I gripped the box tighter. The edges dug into my palms, and I felt the photograph frame shift, pressing against my wrist. The photo of me and Lou standing in front of that marble hotel in Beijing, both of us grinning like fools. The deal that had single-handedly kept the company from going under last year. The deal I'd spent months negotiating, flying back and forth, learning every nuance of the culture, every subtle nod and gesture. Lou had been wary, hesitant. The Chinese market was a minefield, and he wasn't about to hand over millions to some faceless American corporation. But I wasn't a faceless American. I was Michael Green, the guy who sat in Liu's grandmother's kitchen, eating homemade dumplings while she peppered me with questions about my non-existent wife and kids. The guy who spent hours learning how to properly pour baijiu and how to toast without insulting someone's ancestors. And now, all of that was gone. Because Nathan Baines, in his infinite wisdom, had decided I wasn't a good fit. I took a deep breath and forced myself to walk down the hallway, past the rows of darkened cubicles, past the break room where I'd once shared late-night takeout with Ethan and the rest of the team during the Beijing contract negotiations, past the conference room where I'd stood up in front of the board and promised them that Xiang Holdings would stay. And they had, because of me. When I reached the elevator, I punched the button so hard my knuckles cracked. The doors slid open with a hollow ding, and I stepped inside, the box weighing me down like an anchor. My phone vibrated again. Another text, this time from Melissa. You okay? Just heard. WTF is Baines thinking? WTF indeed. I leaned back against the elevator wall, the cool metal pressing against the back of my head. Outside, the rain was still pouring down, streaking the glass like tears. It was almost midnight. The city was a mess of headlights and wet asphalt, the skyscrapers glowing like prison bars. Baines thought he was untouchable. He thought he could waltz in, make a few cuts, and claim the company as his own. But he didn't know me, he didn't know what I was capable of. The elevator doors slid open to the lobby. It was empty, echoing with the muffled sounds of the storm outside. The security guard at the desk looked up, eyes widening when he saw the box in my hands. Michael, he said, voice low. You too? I nodded. Couldn't even muster the energy to speak. Just kept walking. As I pushed through the glass doors and stepped into the rain, the cold hit me like a slap. The wind whipped my face and the box nearly slipped from my hands. I gripped it tighter, hunched my shoulders against the storm. My car was parked halfway down the block. I staggered toward it, water soaking through my shoes, plastering my shirt to my skin. Each step felt heavier, like the ground was dragging me down. When I finally reached the car, I set the box down on the hood, leaning forward, hands braced against the cold metal. Rain dripped down my face, mingling with sweat, with anger, with the sick feeling churning in my gut. What will you do now? Lou's voice echoed in my head. He wanted answers. He wanted assurance. But I had nothing to give him. Nothing but the truth. I opened the car door, threw the box onto the passenger seat, and sank into the driver's seat, fingers trembling as I started the engine. The windshield wipers scraped back and forth, smearing the rain across the glass. My phone rang. I didn't even need to look at the screen to know who it was. Michael. Lou's voice boomed through the car speakers, louder, angrier this time. You still haven't answered my question. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. What are you going to do now? The rain hammered the windshield, blurring the world outside into a smear of red and white lights. Liu's words echoed in my head. What are you going to do now? What was I going to do? Drive home, crack open a bottle, and pretend everything was fine? Walk through the door and tell Sarah that the job I spent a decade killing myself for was gone? The house loomed ahead, lights glowing like tiny distant stars. I pulled into the driveway, killed the engine, and sat there, staring at the front door. Inside, Sarah was waiting. Dinner would be cold. My daughter would be asleep. The box sat beside me, my whole career stuffed inside. Framed awards, folders of contracts, the photo of Liu and me shaking hands in Beijing, the deal that saved the company, the deal Baines was about to burn to the ground. The front door swung open. Sarah stood there, arms crossed, robe tight around her. You're late. I know. I stepped out, rain slicing into me like tiny knives. Sarah's eyes fell to the box. What's that? I swallowed. My career, I said, voice flat. I got fired. Her face crumpled. Fired? How? You're their best. Not anymore, I said, shoving past her. Inside, the house was warm, the air thick with stale casserole and unspoken words. I dropped the box on the floor, the contents shifting. The photo of Liu and me slid out, glass cracked. What about Xiang Holdings? Sarah asked, voice tight. I laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. Liu's already called, twice, wants to know why the guy he trusted just got canned. Are they pulling the contract? Not yet, I said, jaw tight. But they will. And Baines? He doesn't even know how to say hello in Mandarin. Sarah's eyes narrowed. So what are you going to do? I sank onto the couch, rubbing a hand over my face. What was I going to do? Call Liu back and tell him the truth? Tell him that Baines was a fraud who'd run the company into the ground? My phone buzzed. Liu's number again. I let it ring, staring at the ceiling. I didn't know what I was going to do. But the longer I sat there, the angrier I got. If Baines thought he could just erase me, he was in for a rude awakening. The wind howled as I stepped outside, rain slicing through the air like tiny daggers. The street was empty, the world washed in gray, and all I could hear was Liu's last text echoing in my head. We need to talk. Call me now. I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking. Baines was in the conference room right now, probably spinning some story about how he was streamlining the team, how I was holding back progress. The same people I'd worked alongside for years would be nodding along, pretending to buy his slick sales pitch. I started the engine, headlights cutting through the rain, but I couldn't pull away. Not yet. My phone buzzed again and I yanked it out, eyes scanning the screen. Ethan. Baines just sent out a memo. Said you were resistant to change and unable to adapt to company vision. Resistant to change. Unable to adapt. That was what I was now. The guy who held the company together for a decade, now branded as dead weight. Another message came through. This one from Melissa in HR. Melissa. I shouldn't be telling you this, but Baines is going through your files. He's looking for anything he can use to back up his story. Be careful. Be careful. Was she serious? Baines was gutting me in real time, erasing my name, my reputation, my work, and all I could do was sit in the car, drowning in the rain. I slammed my fist against the steering wheel, the horn blaring into the night. How could they believe him? How could they just forget everything I'd done? The late nights, the lost weekends, the sacrifices, the Beijing deal, the dinners with Liu, the endless hours translating contracts word for word, making sure nothing got lost, no detail overlooked. Now, Baines was taking a torch to it all, and they were letting him. My phone buzzed again. Liu. Another text. Michael, are you ignoring me? Ignoring him? No. But how could I call him back and admit that the company was now run by a man who thought he could bluff his way through a Mandarin negotiation? A man who'd tanked the Xiang contract without even realizing what he was doing? I stared through the rain-soaked windshield, the streetlights bleeding into the darkness. Baines had no idea what he was doing. But I did. I knew how fragile that deal was. I knew how easily it could all come crashing down. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles cracked. If Baines wanted to burn my reputation to the ground, fine. Let him try. But he was going to regret underestimating me. I put the car in drive, my pulse pounding like a war drum. There was one thing Baines didn't understand about me. I still had Lou's trust, and if Baines thought he could just waltz in and take over my accounts, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. The wind howled as I stepped outside, rain slicing through the air like tiny daggers. The street was empty, the world washed in gray, and all I could hear was Lou's last text echoing in my head. "We need to talk. Call me now." I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking. Baines was in the conference room right now, probably spinning some story about how he was streamlining the team, how I was holding back progress. The same people I'd worked alongside for years would be nodding along, pretending to buy his slick sales pitch. I started the engine, headlights cutting through the rain, but I couldn't pull away. Not yet. My phone buzzed again, and I yanked it out, eyes scanning the screen. "Ethan, Baines just sent out a memo. Said you were resistant to change and unable to adapt to company vision." Resistant to change, unable to adapt. That was what I was now. The guy who held the company together for a decade, now branded as dead weight. Another message came through. This one from Melissa in HR. "Melissa, I shouldn't be telling you this, but Baines is going through your files. He's looking for anything he can use to back up his story. Be careful. Be careful." Was she serious? Baines was gutting me in real time, erasing my name, my reputation, my work. And all I could do was sit in the car, drowning in the rain. I slammed my fist against the steering wheel, the horn blaring into the night. How could they believe him? How could they just forget everything I'd done? The late nights, the lost weekends, the sacrifices, the Beijing deal, the dinners with Liu, the endless hours translating contracts word for word, making sure nothing got lost, no detail overlooked. Now Baines was taking a torch to it all, and they were letting him. My phone buzzed again. "Lou." Another text. "Michael, are you ignoring me?" Ignoring him? No, but how could I call him back and admit that the company was now run by a man who thought he could bluff his way through a Mandarin negotiation? A man who'd tank the Xi'an contract without even realizing what he was doing? I stared through the rain-soaked windshield, the streetlights bleeding into the darkness. Baines had no idea what he was doing, but I did. I knew how fragile that deal was. I knew how easily it could all come crashing down. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles cracked. If Baines wanted to burn my reputation to the ground, fine. Let him try. But he was going to regret underestimating me. I put the car in drive, my pulse pounding like a war drum. There was one thing Baines didn't understand about me. I still had Lou's trust. And if Baines thought he could just waltz in and take over my accounts, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. I sat there, rain slamming against the windshield like a war drum, my heart pounding in sync. Beijing. Baines was going to Beijing, to Liu, to my clients. I snatched the phone off the seat, scrolling back through Ethan's text. Solidify our relationships. That was the phrase Baines used. My relationships. The ones I'd bled for. The ones he was about to destroy. I dropped the phone and gripped the wheel, staring straight ahead into the storm. It was like the world was coming apart. Rain tearing down in sheets, the streetlights flickering like dying embers. How long would it take for Baines to spin his story? Hours, minutes? Another text came through. This time, from Melissa. "Baines just had a closed-door meeting with the board. Told them you were emotionally unstable and disruptive to team morale. Be careful, Michael. Emotionally unstable. Disruptive. He was rewriting history, painting me as a ticking time bomb, a man too volatile to be trusted, the kind of man who would snap under pressure." I clenched my jaw, a bitter laugh escaping me. Was that his plan all along? Take everything I'd built, then convince everyone I was crazy enough to burn it all down? My phone vibrated again. Liu's number. Not a text this time. A call. I stared at the screen, pulse hammering in my ears. This was it. If I picked up, I'd have to explain why the man he trusted was now a ghost, why the only person who could speak his language was suddenly cut off. I pressed ignore and threw the phone onto the passenger seat. What was I supposed to say? That the company he signed a multi-million-dollar contract with was now in the hands of a man who thought Beijing was just another business trip? That his trusted contact was sitting in a rain-soaked car, screaming silently into the night? I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my nails digging into the leather. Baines was going to Beijing to solidify relationships. And that meant one thing. He was going to use my work, my connections, my reputation to cement himself as the new face of the company. Unless I stopped him. I yanked the car into drive, tires screeching as I shot down the road. The rain was coming down harder now, visibility shrinking to nothing. But I kept going, pushing through the storm, the wipers a frantic blur. I didn't know where I was going. Not yet. But I knew what I had to do. I had to make Liu see the truth. Make him see that the man flying to Beijing wasn't a savior. He was a thief. And if I didn't get to Liu first, I'd lose everything. The city blurred past in streaks of red and white, the rain coming down so hard it felt like the sky was falling apart. My heart hammered against my ribs as I weaved through traffic, headlights flashing in my peripheral vision like explosions. Baines was leaving tonight. First class, straight to Beijing, straight to Liu. I could see it already. Baines in his perfect suit, leaning back in that plush leather seat, sipping champagne and rehearsing every lie he was about to tell. Michael was erratic. Michael was unreliable. Michael was losing it. I gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles cracked. Was he packing right now? Smiling as he folded his $1,000 suits? Feeling untouchable? Did he think I was just going to sit here and let him erase me? My phone buzzed on the seat again. Lou. Another call. Another chance slipping away. I snatched it up, hands shaking. But before I could press answer, the screen flashed with another incoming text. This one from Ethan. You need to see this. Baines just sent a memo to the board. He's saying you were unstable and posed a threat to company stability. Said you were obsessed with the Xiang account and wouldn't let anyone else handle it. A threat. Obsessed. He was building his story brick by brick. First I was incompetent. Now I was unstable. Next what? Dangerous, unhinged, a liability? The light ahead flashed red, and I slammed the brakes, tires screeching. The car jerked to a stop, rain hammering the roof like 1,000 tiny fists. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat, chest heaving. What the hell was I doing? Driving around in the rain like a maniac while Baines was about to walk onto that plane and rewrite my entire life? He was going to Beijing, to Liu, with my work, my clients, my reputation. My phone vibrated again. Liu. Another text. Michael, last chance. Call me, now. Last chance. I stared at the screen, breath fogging the windshield. Liu was still reaching out, still waiting to hear from me. If I stayed silent, I was handing Baines the script, letting him be the hero, the savior, the man with the new vision. I swiped to unlock the phone, thumb hovering over the call button, but then my eyes flicked to the dashboard clock. 9:47 p.m. If Baines was leaving tonight, he'd be at the airport now. Security, check-in, lounging in first class, already making his pitch in his head. If I called Liu now, he might believe me. But Baines would still be in the air, selling his version of the story. And once he had Liu alone, face to face, it wouldn't matter what I said. Baines was a master at charming his way through anything. He could convince Liu I was a lunatic and have him eating out of his hand by the time they touched down. No, I couldn't let that happen. I threw the car back into gear and spun the wheel, tires shrieking as I made a hard left. If Baines was leaving tonight, I had one shot to catch him before he got on that plane, because if he made it to Beijing, it was over. The gate door slid shut with a hollow thunk, the sound echoing through my skull. Baines was gone. On that plane, on his way to Liu. I stood there, breath heaving, fists clenched so tight my nails bit into my palms. People brushed past me, their voices a distant hum, a blur of movement and sound. All I could see was Baines's face, that smug grin as he handed over his boarding pass, as he vanished behind that door without a second glance. I'd been standing right there, close enough to grab his arm, yank him back, demand he explain himself, close enough to throw a punch, to scream in his face that I knew exactly what he was doing. But I hadn't. I'd frozen. I'd watched him walk away with my life in his hands. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I yanked it out. Another text from Liu. Michael, this is unacceptable. Are you ignoring me? I leaned against the cold metal railing, the terminal spinning around me. Baines was airborne now, flying straight to Beijing, straight to Liu. And what was I doing? Standing here in the middle of a crowded airport, drenched in rain and regret. My only shot slipping further away with every second that ticked by. My phone buzzed again. Ethan this time. Man, what the hell is going on? Baines just told the team you had a complete meltdown at the office. Said you refused to hand over the Xiang account and security had to step in. My jaw clenched. Meltdown? Security? I wasn't even in the office. Baines was already rewriting the story, and I was just a few steps behind. If he told Liu that I was losing it, that I was unhinged, what would Liu think when he didn't hear from me? He'd believe it. Why wouldn't he? I pressed my palms to my temples, the world closing in, the walls pressing closer. Think, Michael. Think. If I called Liu now, would he even pick up? Or would he already be sitting in a hotel suite, listening to Baines pour poison in his ear? I pushed away from the railing, my pulse pounding. My shoes squeaked against the tile as I headed toward the exit, each step heavy, leaden. My mind raced. Baines had control of the narrative now. He'd locked me out, cast me as the lunatic, the bitter ex-employee who couldn't let go. And Liu, he wanted stability, predictability, not a loose cannon. If Baines could make him believe I was unstable, Liu would cut ties, walk away, never look back. I shoved through the exit doors, the cold night air slamming into me like a fist. The rain was coming down harder now, a relentless downpour that stung my skin. I stood there, chest heaving, drenched to the bone, staring up at the sky like it might open up and swallow me whole. Baines was on that plane, the plane that was already taxiing down the runway, gathering speed, preparing to lift off. I could still see the tail lights, 2 red dots fading into the night. And then, with a deafening roar, the plane rose into the sky, vanishing into the storm clouds. I was too late. The car skidded through the rain-soaked streets, headlights slicing through the darkness. My fingers clenched the wheel, the skin tight and raw. Baines was on a plane, drinking top-shelf scotch, smirking at the clouds. Meanwhile, I was tearing through empty streets like a maniac, racing toward the only thing I had left, my files. If Baines wanted to spin me as a lunatic, he'd need evidence, and he didn't have it. But I did. I swung the car into the office parking lot, tires screeching, water spraying up like a tidal wave. The building loomed ahead, a hulking silhouette against the stormy sky. The lobby lights were still on, a dull yellow glow. I stepped out, rain hammering down, drenching me in seconds. My shirt clung to my back, shoes squishing as I sprinted to the glass doors. Locked. I yanked at the handle, heart pounding. Locked. Of course it was locked. It was past midnight, and I was a nobody now, just a fired man standing in the rain, begging to be let in. I slammed my fist against the glass, the echo reverberating through the empty lobby. Think, Michael. Think. I still had my keycard. Would it still work? Or had Baines already deactivated it? I dug through my pocket, fingers shaking, and pulled it out. The plastic was slick with rain, the edges chewed from years of nervous fidgeting. I swiped it across the scanner. Red light. No, 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 I muttered, swiping again. Red. Again. Red. I pressed my forehead against the glass, rain dripping down my nose. Baines was already erasing me, deleting me one access point at a time. But he'd forgotten one thing. The loading bay. I sprinted around the side of the building, feet pounding against the pavement. The alley was dark, trash bins lining the walls, puddles spreading like oil slicks. I skidded to a stop in front of the steel door. No scanner here, just a keypad. And I still remembered the code. I punched it in, breath held, heart slamming. The lock clicked. I shoved the door open, the scent of damp cardboard and stale air hitting me. The storage room was dark, crates stacked to the ceiling, shadows stretching across the concrete floor. I edged forward, shoes squeaking, eyes fixed on the door to the main office. If Baines was smart, he'd already started rifling through my files, looking for anything to back up his story. Emails, memos, anything he could twist. But I knew what to look for. The emails he sent me when he first took over. The ones where he asked for my notes on the Xiang account. The ones where he said he needed to understand the nuances before taking over. Proof that he'd been planning this all along. Proof that he'd lied. I inched closer, ears straining for any sound. The office was silent, too silent. I pushed open the door, the glow from the emergency exit sign casting eerie shadows across the cubicles. My desk was still there, my computer still on, the screensaver a slow, drifting pattern of lights. I crept forward, fingers trembling as I reached for the keyboard. One password, just one password, and I could get everything I needed. I started typing. The door behind me creaked open. The door creaked, the sound slicing through the silence like a knife. I froze, fingers hovering over the keyboard, breath caught in my throat. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving closer. The office was dark, the only light coming from the screen in front of me, casting a cold blue glow over everything. Shadows stretched long across the floor, flickering as the emergency exit sign buzzed and hummed. I swallowed hard, every nerve screaming. If Baines had sent someone to clean up whatever evidence he left behind, I was dead in the water. I couldn't afford to get caught here. Not when Baines was in the air, feeding Lou lies about me. The footsteps stopped. Silence. I turned, every muscle tensed, expecting to see a security guard, or worse, Baines's lackey. But it wasn't either of those. It was Ethan. He stood there, his eyes wild, hair plastered to his forehead like he'd been running. His chest rose and fell like he'd just sprinted a mile. "Jesus, Michael," he said, voice a sharp whisper. "What the hell are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" I snapped, adrenaline spiking. "What are you doing here?" "I saw your car in the lot," he said, glancing over his shoulder like he expected someone to follow him. "Baines is telling everyone you lost it. Said you stormed through the airport. Tried to attack him." "Attack him?" My laugh came out sharp, bitter. "I never touched him." Ethan took a step closer, lowering his voice. "That's not what he's saying. He's already got the board on his side. They're calling this a security risk. If they find you here, they'll call the cops." "Yeah, I know," I said, turning back to the screen. "But I don't have a choice, Ethan. Baines is setting me up. I need proof." "Proof?" Ethan frowned, glancing at the monitor. "What kind of proof?" "The emails," I said, fingers flying over the keyboard. "The ones he sent me right after he took over. He asked me to forward all my notes on the Xiang account. Said he needed to get up to speed." Ethan moved closer, eyes darting to the screen. "You think he was planning this from the start?" I pulled up my inbox, scrolling through weeks of emails, my pulse hammering in my ears. Come on. Where are they?" Then I found them. 3 emails from Baines, all within hours of each other, each one more insistent than the last. "Michael, need those notes ASAP. Meeting with Liu tomorrow." "Michael, why haven't you responded? Need the Xiang account breakdown." "Michael, this is urgent. Forward everything you have on Xiang." I highlighted them all, right-clicked, and hit Save As. A folder popped up. I named it Baines Setup and hit Download. The progress bar inched forward, each second feeling like a lifetime. Ethan shifted beside me, chewing his lip. "What are you going to do?" "Send it to Liu," I said, jaw clenched. "Show him Baines has been lying through his teeth." The download completed. I attached the folder to an email, fingers shaking as I typed Liu's address. But as I hovered over the send button, Ethan grabbed my arm. "Wait," he said, eyes locked on mine. "If Baines finds out you're doing this, if he gets to Liu first, he'll bury you for good." I swallowed, staring at the send button, feeling like it was a detonator in my hand. If I sent it now, there was no going back. The rain poured down in sheets, drumming against the car roof, drowning out everything but the sound of my heartbeat hammering in my ears. Liu's text was still on the screen. "Received. Boarding plane now. We need to talk when I land." I let out a breath, my body sagging against the seat. Liu was coming to New York. Baines would land in Beijing expecting a hero's welcome, but he'd walk into a meeting room full of empty chairs. I shoved the USB drive back into my pocket, fingers still shaking. It was over. For now. The rain started to ease up, the downpour fading to a soft patter. I leaned back, staring up at the night sky, watching the storm clouds break apart. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. My phone buzzed again, a call. "Liu." I hit answer, bringing the phone to my ear. "Michael," Liu's voice came through, tense but controlled. "I read everything. The emails, the memos, the meltdown at the airport." I swallowed, throat tight. Liu, I swear, Baines is lying. I never threatened him. I never had a meltdown. He's trying to take over the Xiang account. He's been setting me up from the start. Liu was silent for a moment. Then, he let out a long breath. I believe you. Relief crashed through me like a wave, so intense my eyes stung. You do? I've known you for 10 years, Michael, Liu said, his voice softening. You're not a perfect man, but you're not a liar. And Baines? He reeked of desperation the moment he called me from the plane. Told me you'd gone crazy. Said you were obsessed with the Xiang account. But when I asked him specifics, he couldn't give me a straight answer. Because he doesn't have any, I said, leaning forward, the tension finally starting to bleed from my shoulders. He doesn't know anything about Xiang. He never did. And now he never will, Liu said. I've already told the board to hold all communications with him. When he lands in Beijing, he'll find nothing but closed doors. A laugh burst from my throat, sharp and bitter. You're cutting him out? No, Liu said, his tone firm. I'm cutting him off. And Michael, when I get to New York, we need to talk about what happens next. What happens next? I repeated, breath catching. I can't work with your company anymore, Liu said. Not with Baines there, but if you're willing, I'd like to keep working with you. I sat up straighter, eyes wide. Me? You mean, on my own? Start your own firm, Liu said. You know the business, you know my company, and you speak my language. That's what matters. I pressed a hand over my mouth, a grin spreading beneath it. Baines was done. The Xiang account was mine, and I wasn't just taking back what he stole. I was building something new. Liu, I said, voice thick, you have no idea what this means to me. Get some sleep, Liu said. You'll need it. You're going to be very busy. The call ended. The rain had stopped, the clouds breaking apart to reveal the first glint of stars. I leaned back, eyes closing, a smile still stretched across my face. For the first time in weeks, the nightmare was over, and my new life was just beginning.